Welcome to today's Corporate Venturing Insider series. We are at GCV in Montreal, and I'm really excited to have someone who's going to teach me a lot together with you because I know very little about the space that Jenna is working at Comcast. Jenna, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So first, what's your journey into corporate venturing?
Yes, it was a long journey because actually I was more in business development, sales, managing partnerships, came from, Silicon Graphics, and then made a shift in my career going from uh, silicon chips and communication to working for a media company. And I ran track and cross country for Baylor University. So sports was always my love.
Okay.
I wanted to get out of semiconductors and into something a little more exciting, and that is definitely sports. So I've now been at Comcast for 11 years. And in 2020, we stood up the Comcast NBCU SportsTech program. And it is really intended for us to invest in 10 startups each year to really push us beyond the status quo in our sports products, fan experiences that we can create. And I think we've created an opportunity for founders to come in and not just innovate across Comcast and NBCU and Sky. If you look at us as a company, we have deep roots in sports, whether it's we own the Wells Fargo Center, we own the Philadelphia Flyers. So very focused on making sure that that product on the ice is the best that it can be. But then we also reach 30 million homes from a broadband perspective, and Peacock has the most live sports rights. And even in the play sector with it, the standpoint of sports engine. And we know that kids who play are fans for life. So this program is really designed to bring value across the board in our organization.
Very nice. So for the audience who are outside the US, can you actually explain what is Comcast, what is the business model, and why sport is so important to Comcast?
So I'll break it up into three parts. So Comcast, really our high-speed internet data. It's at the root, I would say, of our company there. But we're also a cable provider as well. So in your home, you have internet coming in. I think it's now up to 9 to 10 connected devices in a single home. And
I'm a customer.
And being able to manage that is a huge thing.
Yep.
We're also very proud of X1. It is probably the best way to experience entertainment in any form in the living room. You can pick up the voice remote and say, women's floor exercises. And during the 17 days of the Olympics, it'll drop you right into those moments. It could be live, it could be streaming, VOD, but as a customer, you don't care. You just want to see the sports moments that matter to you. So I would say from a revenue standpoint, Comcast is probably the larger revenue driver. And then if you look at NBC, where they're storytellers from a news standpoint, from a sports standpoint, as we have Universal theme parks and a huge portfolio on the cable side of the business. And then Sky was a more recent acquisition that we did and really gave us that international reach. And a lot of the similarities in terms of the way that we're reaching customers, whether that's through Sky Glass or Sky Now. And I think altogether, think of us as right at that intersection of media and entertainment. And I get to live in that sliver of sports where live only happens once. And it is truly the moments that bring us together.
Yeah, it's a special moment where you are together enjoying life. So this is clearly a very important element of Comcast. Now, when we think about companies like Comcast, we don't think about them engaging with startups. So I'll ask about that. But I want to go through your journey, and you mentioned your media and peer experience. And there's something very interesting because corporate VCs are always challenged. Financial value, strategic value. Financial value is very tangible, very easy to calculate.
Yeah.
Strategic value is more intangible, and yet potentially this is a more important part. If we think about media and marketing, you have the tangible, which sometimes could be vanity KPIs, and then you have the intangible, which actually probably matters even more. How does your experience in media help you today driving the right goals?
So for us, our North Star and the value that we provide to the companies that we invest in is we have line of sight of how we're going to test and pilot that technology. And we have gone through a rigorous selection process to arrive at the 10. We had 1,500 companies apply this last time. So arriving at those 10 companies, and we can talk through that selections process, but it is truly layers of due diligence across all the different business units of the company. And then at the end of the day, we want to learn from them. We want them to push us beyond what's on the current roadmap and get us thinking about new possibilities, keep that entrepreneurial mindset alive and well. And it's a muscle that if we don't continually use, it will atrophy like anything else. And Comcast, it is truly an entrepreneurial company. It was started by Ralph Roberts 60 plus years ago. He handed the reins to his son, Brian Roberts. So it started with that entrepreneurial spirit at the core of the culture, but it's really hard when you're a 60-year-old company, as large as we are, to stay nimble and fast. And so this is a very tangible way for us to work side by side with these entrepreneurs, keep our brains pink and wrinkly, and really push ourselves.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about the selection process.
Yeah.
1,500 coming in. That's a lot to review.
Yes.
How big is your team to review, and how do you select?
Well, I should set a little bit of context, because one of the unique differentiations of our program is that, yes, you could have just played with the sports assets and portfolio that we have as a company and provided immense value, but we wanted to make it bigger. And so we accomplished that by bringing in external sports partners. And it's all built off of who also has that entrepreneurial, innovative mindset, but where do we have media rights and sponsorship investments? So we've already invested the money there. Let's have that shared sort of intention of bringing in more fans, more ticketing revenue, all of those things that drive that. So we brought in NASCAR and talk about an innovative. They are willing to disrupt themselves across the board.
Yep.
Comcast Business powers about 13 of the tracks that are there. And, NBC Sports is the one covering it the back half of the season. So really an important partnership for us there. And we have a 10-year title sponsorship on the Xfinity side. So Xfinity Cup Series and so forth. Premier League is another really important partnership for us. It is, with the World Cup coming to the U.S., we know it's going to bring fandom and youth sports along with it in the soccer space. So they've been a fantastic partner and really critical to our Peacock streaming business. Another is WWE. Again, it is a fan base unlike any other.
Very loyal.
Very loyal fan base. Very loyal. And then PGA Tour. You're not going to have a 24/7 dedicated cable channel to golf and not have a deep relationship there. And so everything around go, watch, play, learn, get better, all of that is really important for us. And then we have 3 Olympic teams. So U.S. ski and snowboard, swimming and cycling. So those are our partners that are invested and putting in the sweat equity to help us choose these companies. So going back to your original question, 1,500 applicants. We have a really strategic partnership with Boomtown. They are a innovation operator, if you will.
Okay.
So they will stand up custom bespoke accelerator programs on behalf of companies like us. And they are a fantastic partner because they are small and nimble and entrepreneurial. And you need that to really make it work within a large organization like us. So we co-invest together. Our deal flow team, it's Boomtown employees that are really dialed into what are the innovation needs and priorities of us and all of our partners in the consortium. So I work hand in hand with them to do those first round interviews, get us to the top 50, and then that's when all of the sports partners start to weigh in. And so we have a 3-week period where they have access to scoring and reviewing the companies at their own pace. It's everything from investment decks to team videos, product demos, all of that in a very concise way for them to really answer a few questions, which is, is this relevant to the business? Do you see a way that you would test and pilot the technology? Do you believe that this is the team to get it done? A lot of those things.
Yep.
So they really guide us to the top 25. And then that's where the real fun happens, because we bring those founders in. We stack that Zoom with as many of the subject matter experts that can, really challenge them and ask the tough questions about latency and some of the things that have hindered us in the past of bringing technology into the production space or storytelling. And so they go through, they pitch their company, we ask them all the tough questions, they exit Zoom left, then we rescore again, and then we have a very healthy debate. And it is very fascinating to see the similarity of innovation needs or gaps for a NASCAR versus a PGA Tour versus our golf business. And
which is not intuitive.
You would think that's the case, but there's far more similarities than there are differences. I mean, to your point, NASCAR and PGA Tour, you think about it, the Daytona track, you can fit 17 football fields in the infield.
Yep.
In that circular race space, you've got the same dynamic whenever you're covering a tournament. You've got 150 acres. At any given point in time, you've got 12 to 14 balls in the air, and they're capturing every shot live. So it is immense technology that is needed to bring all of that to life. And if you can build something that can serve, hundreds of thousands of fans in large geographic areas, you've got something that can scale beyond just the sports sector as well.
So there's so much to unpack, many golden nuggets. How did you, because it could be so daunting for a company to do what you're doing, and partnership really matters in this case. So how did you go about selecting them to then unroll the program?
So for us, we really wanted to choose a partner that was going to build something in partnership with us that was very bespoke, that allowed us to say, these are our business goals and outcomes. We want to test and pilot the technology and integrate it into the business where it makes sense. So that could be licensing, acquiring, really folding it into what we're doing. And so we needed to have our own model to help us aim at the right sort of adjacent growth areas for the business, help us find those most innovative startups from around the world. And actually, if you look at our current cohort, it's predominantly international companies. And that's kind of evolved over the last 4 years. And then integrate. And I think I would give us a B plus on the aim and the find. The integration piece is always going to be the challenge, because at the end of the day, we have a scale and an expectation that our fans have: security, privacy.
Very high bar.
Very, very high bar. So the pace at which we can move versus the pace that entrepreneurs can move is always out of sync. And, but this is the program itself is 6 months to really test and validate it. But once we've made that investment, because we do make an equity investment, so we have skin in the game in their success, and it keeps us accountable that even beyond that 6-month calendar program, this is a portfolio investment, and we're going to continue to open doors to test as their products evolve based off of learnings from us to really find product market fit. We find now that there are companies that are in our second cohort that are just now really getting out into fans experiencing it.
So I want to double click on the out of sync, because this is one of the challenge of engaging startups with big companies. There is a maturity element. When is a product ready to be tested and to be deployed? How much of that is part of your selection process, where you may be a bit more, risky in taking them a bit earlier than you would, but you believe that in 6 months they could get to the point where they can deploy?
This is such a great question. And I would say our program has evolved a lot. We started in more of that traditional 3-month accelerator program, a little bit earlier stage. But we found that if we're really going to test and pilot things, there's got to be an existing product. There's got to be a little bit of traction, something to get our arms around to really test and pilot with. And we could do a lot internally around proofs of concepts, but we really want to advance that to a pilot that is outwardly facing, that is our fans, our customers experiencing it. And give them that opportunity for a commercial deal. I always like to say, at the end of the day, if it's important enough to the business that we're willing to pay for it, that's revenue coming in to help them build a sustainable business. They've truly found some relevant product market fit, and they'll continue to grow with us. And that de-risks our initial investment. And that's value across not just our portfolio, but this is multiple teams, leagues, types of sports. So that gives them a real sense of we're finding market scale.
And in a way, you're bringing this go-to-market to the startups. Yes. And so I feel like in the subtitles, maybe earlier you were investing in earlier stage startups, you learned that wasn't quite that, and now you're much more deliberate about finding when it's going to really match, which is still hard. So
it's a real art and science. And so I would say in each of the 10 companies that we invest in each year, we typically will have one that's on the earlier side. A great example of that is a company called Movers. So especially on the Sky Sports side, from a commentating standpoint, skeletal tracking has always been the most desired piece. And it's because we can't necessarily enforce that players wear something on their body for all of that biomechanical data. But when you do have that biomechanical data, it can just completely change the storytelling. And so Movers, this is what they do. They have amazing camera technology that allows to create almost that volumetric data capture. And then you have all of this data that can be transferred into an Unreal Engine and create absolutely biomechanically accurate replicas of these athletes.
Like a perfect twin.
A perfect twin, a perfect digital twin. So you imagine, and they're working right now with NBC Sports on the Olympic production side and just finished a proof of concept across 6 different sports. And gymnastics is just such a great example of that, because then you can suddenly have 2 different digital twins on the same beam, look around at different points to be able to say, because of her height, the velocity at which she has to turn has to be this much. So it gives you that that data just adds to the
experience.
Yep. It gives you a greater appreciation. It's that relatable awe, because these athletes, are doing phenomenal things. But you kind of want to know, like, how high off the ground is she? When she's tumbling, what's that G-force on her body? It's 11 times her own weight.
11 times?
11 times.
No way.
Yeah. And so it's those types of things it's those no way moments that has you even leaned in, right?
Yeah.
That's what we want. We want people leaning in, really appreciating what these athletes are accomplishing, because that pays dividends in terms of this investment that we made in Olympics.
So this example of Mover you mentioned was very early.
Yeah.
So that's the one where you probably incubated for even longer.
So they were in cohort 2, and here we are. We just kicked off last week with cohort 4, and it's really been in the last 6 months that they've been at a point where we're ready to do this.
Okay.
And now I get to pass around this sizzle reel, and people are just amazed by it. And then quickly we can look at it from our technology and product experience team, where we're building on, X1 or Zoom or any of those products and platforms, and to be able to say, oh, wait, here's this new technology that could create sort of edutainment around gymnastics that is exclusive and only available if you're an Xfinity customer. Those are the types of areas of value that we want to find, because it's that justifiable reason that you really want to have internet through Xfinity.
Yeah, the exclusive experience. So this is a good example where you kind of deviated from having something that's direct match, because you feel like the experience would be such a wow, it's worth taking longer. Yeah. So how do you adapt this? Because you have this 6-month program. In this case, it's going to take longer. So how do you adapt or bespoke for them?
Yes, we're constantly learning and evolving that piece of it too, because while yes, in that 6-month program, the current cohort, there's a really concentrated spotlight there, but these are portfolio companies that we have to continue to invest in. And so we're constantly figuring out ways to bring their outside voices in and introduce them to parts of the business when they're ready. And so a great example of that, we do what we call Spark sessions. And this is typically around a topic where we bring outside voices in. We'll bring in, different partners, some of our portfolio companies. We just did one with Comcast SportsTech. So that's where we own the Philadelphia Flyers and Wells Fargo Center. And that whole Spark session was an in-person. It was our first in-person one that we had. And it was an opportunity to get a tour of Wells Fargo Center. And then we had 2 different panel discussions that looked at what is the fan data that we can observe that can lead to important decisions like the $350 million investment we put into upgrading the Wells Fargo Center. And if you think about that, it is a place where we have employees working. We have, ticketing, vendors, merchandise, all in this space. You have fans that are coming in, some that are diehard, loyal fans, some that just love gritty, some that are just there to socialize with their friends, or they could be, entertaining business clients. So they've got to create a space that has can serve all of these different audiences. Yeah. And it was just a really fascinating panel discussion where we had 4 of our portfolio companies involved in that, and people from all different parts of the company. And so we do the panel discussion, then we do breakouts of sort of like, okay, what has this sparked for you? That's an idea of what's missing, an ingredient, something that you need in the business. And then at the end of that, we got to watch the game. So it's just a really, I would say, tangible way of making sure that our portfolio companies that are relevant to whenever those spark sessions are happening come and be that outside voice in and help us kind of shape the next generation.
So I have so many questions about the value you bring to the startups, the value you bring to the partners on top of Comcast, but let's go through the selection process. So you get to the top 50.
Yes.
At that point, it's just Bluetown and your team assessing them. Mm-hmm. Do you talk to them, or is it just based on the...
We do. So okay. We also, it's an opportunity to bring in a lot of summer interns as well, because to be honest, the sheer volume of 1,500 actually makes me very nervous.
Everyone would be nervous.
Because I'm always afraid there's an incredible gem in there. Yeah. And not everyone that applies is really, truly ready. And we nurture those relationships. And we have plenty of examples of companies that applied year 1 that were in cohort 3. And it was just that their technology and our need just finally intersect at that point. So we do a ton of just take the meeting, talk to the team, review. And some you can easily kind of dismiss as like too early. They don't really have a product that's out there that we can test, and we don't have line of sight of how we would do that. So that kind of goes into the nurture bucket. Yep. And then you have the ones that are, we spend so much time with all of our sports partners doing innovation discovery sessions. And so it's everything from how are they investing their time with the companies in our portfolio, because that is 100% aligned to where their business focus and need is. But then it's also what's next. Yeah. Where are the gaps? Where are the new growth areas that can unlock new revenue or cost savings, operational efficiencies? So that becomes really our lens of the top 50, so that the ones that we are bringing forward are relevant. And so when we think, man, this is a top 50 relevant company, it's because we've had those first round interviews with them. Interns have done that, and we'll do a couple rounds of it too, because we're now investing in companies that are much more mature. This current cohort has 2 Series A companies, one that's on the Canadian Public Exchange. So it's a much more rigorous process too when it comes to the equity investment, because they have boards that need to sign off on, wait a minute, what's going to be the value here, all of that.
Which I'm sure you're selling the go-to-market, the access to these beautiful partners and so on. So top 50, now this is probably the most challenging, but how do you go from top 50 to the top 25 that you introduced to the partners?
Yeah. I would say the top 50, it's usually we can get to like the top 100 and feel really confident. Yeah. And then that's where we have very healthy debates of going back of like, hey, in our last innovation discovery session, this is what we heard from PGA Tour. This is what we heard from
key, right?
Our golf business. And you have to find the triangulation of this is going to have the most relevance to as many partners as possible. The way we structure the program is each company coming in gets a commercial advisor that's assigned to them at the beginning. And that's because they've raised their hand and said, I want first cut at this. This is how I'm going to test and pilot it. So we have to kind of be like, who's got the gravitas, who's got the need, who's got, puts the sweat equity into working with these companies. And that kind of helps us figure that piece out. So I would say I'm pretty confident by the time we're at the 100 there's a lot of interchangeable ones, even getting to the 50.
Yeah.
And we have a great example. So I should probably back up that we launched SportsTech January 14th of 2020.
Yep.
So here I finally get my dream job. And as we all know,
COVID
world
happened. Yep.
tilted left, everything shut down.
Yep.
Sports shut down.
Yep.
And it could have been the time to pull the plug entirely, but it really just changed our focus areas in terms of the type of technology we urgently needed at that point.
If anything, your program was perfect timing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because then it became critical in the media and entertainment segment. Okay, figure out how we can do remote production, figure out different ways of transporting, because you're not going to be able to get 40 people going to a PGA tournament, and you now have 4 that you can safely send. Like, how are you going to do all this remote production? And same thing for Wells Fargo Center. It's like when we, state by state, you could safely start to bring fans back in. It was sort of like, well, how do we handle that from a ticketing standpoint? A lot of touchless, a lot of technology that really kind of pushed us, I would say, on that front. But there was a company in Venue that they were always sort of just on the bubble of top 50. But there was just something about Kelly Proct that brilliant entrepreneur, and had spent 20 plus years at HP doing these really complex mathematical models on, weather patterns and all of these things. And what she really loves is sports. And she was bringing predictive analytics to that. Sort of like, let's not necessarily focus on what just happened, what's about to happen.
Yep.
And, but again, at the time, their implementation was actually an app that you could use in a baseball stadium. Well, we weren't sure if fans were going to be. And we pushed our first cohort to 2021 thinking, well, of course, we'll all be in person.
Yep.
And that was 100% virtual. So we adapted to all of that. So we weren't sure, were we going to have fans? But just the true belief in her and the team as the ones to figure this out. Again, they made it through the interview process, but they were just kind of on the bubble. And I'm like, no, this is the right company to invest in. Fast forward, that app became very critical because it was our first way for us to do the proof of concept for our senior leadership to be able to see and watch a game and go, how accurate are their predictions before we integrate this into a live broadcast? And because we own RSNs in Chicago and the Bay Area, we were able to do Chicago White Sox, Oakland
So you did your
A's.
pilots.
Exactly. So this became the forward fan facing. And so they were the data that ran our pitch and predict. And so it was an overlay of the probability of where they're going to hit a home run. And having our commentators sort of talk about that and getting used to, I'm not just going to talk about why that was a cool thing that just happened. I'm going to
what might happen,
yep. Right? And Apple saw that. So when they got their Friday baseball, the very first thing they said is, we want that technology. And so that really put them on the mark there. They've gone on to do micro betting and in-game with the NBA. So they went on to do their NBA Launchpad program. And again, when you look at sort of what they were able to create side by side of what are the nuances in basketball that are different than baseball? Likewise, they also have a commercial deal with NASCAR. And when you have 100 laps,
yep.
that many drivers, the amount of bettable moments is almost astronomical. But again, they sit side by side with NASCAR and say, all right, what do fans really care about? And that becomes the data feed for all of the betting.
So I think that's the type of success story that will feed even more startups wanting to apply.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to what I think is a best practice, which I've never heard before, which is assigning a commercial advisor.
Yes.
Can you talk about how the idea came from and the impact it has?
Yes, I love this. So, and this is part of our learning too, of needing to develop a 6-month program, because if you're going for more mature companies, you need to give them space to run their business. They have existing clients. And so the kickoff, and we had, this is very timely because we just had our kickoff last week in Orlando. Going into that, we have a commercial advisor assigned for that one-to-one relationship. And that's really to get that first proof of concept or pilot off the ground. And so week one, we were in Orlando because of a couple of different factors. The three main things, it's a deep customer discovery for the founders to really understand the nuances of our business versus PGA Tour versus a NASCAR. The second is to start building those relationships across the partner consortium. And then the third is to experience live sporting events at scale for an appreciation of this is what your tech is going to have to handle. And to be able to connect some dots, you know your tech better than we do. Where are ways that you could see your technology adding value? And so we kicked off with actually our theme park team. Very similar. They are making investments and bets in technology. It takes a good 5 to 7 years to develop a brand new ride from the IP concept idea to when a guest is stepping on. But 3 years out, they need to lock in. Yep. So Mario Kart, as an example, 7 years out, they're like, oh, AR, it'll be off the shelf. It'll be everywhere. It'll be a commodity, not a problem. 5 years out, okay, this is getting to be a little bit concerning because if you think about the AR, what they have to do, they have to have glasses that you can throw in a dishwasher, basically, because of all the people, you
need experience.
To keep. Yeah, and they're going to be dropped a million times, and you've got kids doing it, So, and then at 3 years out, it was all right. We're going to have to develop this ourselves, and so that's just a great way to remind people that we touch people in parts of their lives and need to think about the whole product journey and experience through the eyes of the customers we're serving. And when you hear their best practices of how they have ride safety, but then also are trying to be, cutting edge and innovative, that's really important. We got to spend time with PGA Tour at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. They get to see how do they capture every shot live. And it is fascinating technology. And then all the storytelling that can come off of it. And how does that partnership work between PGA Tour and NBC Productions? And we were at NASCAR, so we get to see the track, do the tour. And each of those segments, I was doing fireside chats with leaders. So we had 26 of our sports partners that were there. I did 12 fireside chats and interviewed 18 business leaders. And that was across Comcast, NBC, Sky, PGA Tour, you name it. Those, to be able to understand what are the real revenue levers for NASCAR and what really matters there, it allows them to be much more educated. So then when they're coming with a proposal or an idea, it's grounded in something that they understand is truly a business driver for them.
Talking of grounded, I think your media experience really matters here, right?
Yes.
You have a lens of what is a story to tell, how it's going to be seen, experienced.
Exactly. And then at the mid-program, we come back together again. And this one is really...
What do you mean by mid-program?
Mid-program, so mid-6-month program.
Okay.
So we have what we kind of call with the commercial advisor, it's sort of that one-to-one. And then the midpoint of the program, we come back together, and that's the one-to-many in the partners in the consortium. So it's again built around a sporting event, but the intention is the founders will stand up and say, this is the way we've been testing it. This is the value that our technology provides. And then their sports partner stands up and says, these are the business outcomes we expect. Here's how we're measuring success. This is what we're going to do next. And there's something about the partner advocating for the startup that it then just unlocks all these other proofs of concepts. And the rest of it is facilitated discussions, sitting down saying, okay, I have a similar issue here. Could we do this, and this? And coming out of that, I would say it unlocks probably 6 to 7x more pilots and proof of concepts. But it's in a way that they can then kind of prioritize how is their technology going to show up best, who's got the most urgent need, who really, and we work with them on the back half of the program to kind of balance those priorities. And then the very end sort of seminal moment is again at a sporting event. This year it'll be at the Rally Innovation Conference, and that's One to the World. And there we've really helped them hone in on business development skills. They have a presence there. They can do live product demos. And the goal and the outcome there is that you walk away with, 4 to 6 new business opportunities outside of the consortium. It's amazing to work with the brands, the sports brands that we have, but if they're going to build a company that's going to last, it can't just be.
It has to grow beyond.
It's got to grow beyond.
I want to touch on the partners advocating. Their first interaction is when you get to the top 25, at which point they meet your top 25.
Yes.
And that's a very special moment, right? Because you know what the partners are looking for. You've selected carefully to your top 25, which must be so hard. How do you get that first meeting right?
We do coach them on, here's the allotment of time that you have. Make sure that you're really clear on the problem that you're solving, where you can see value. I think the companies that do the best in that interview process have really been thoughtful about who's going to be, who they're going to bring value to.
Yep.
And they come with use cases or examples that are very specific to the golf industry or very specific to motorsports. Or very specific to broadcast technology that will help us kind of amplify how we do storytelling. And this year was very interesting because we always record them because it's over 3 days. There's method to the madness of doing it that closely together because we will bring in companies that, as an example, for us, we bring in so much content to be able to really, truly meta tag that data, use AI to help us take this massive amounts of footage and cut it down into very personalized highlights that are different for different types of platforms and different types of fans, different age demographics. That's a huge area where we really need to create a lot more value.
Yeah.
And so we brought in 3 companies that squarely fit in that space. And then it's almost a little bit of a bake-off. And that's why you want it in a contained period of time. Because sometimes you'll see one team and you're like, oh, this is amazing. And you score them. And then you see that and you're like, I didn't think that was the one that could be beat. But then a different one will kind of rise to the top. The debate at the end where we all score before we have that debate is to try to get some of that groupthink out of the dynamic.
Yeah. Avoiding anchoring.
Yes, exactly. And it is pretty fascinating because everybody will come with a different lens of where they weight more value. And people will pick up different things. And we have created this sort of trusted space of really, challenging each other, thinking of, oh, I hadn't thought of it this way. I think the partners learn so much from each other that trust has been built. And then from there, it's then looking at the scores. And this time around was interesting. We record them typically in the past. We would, if an engineer missed it, we would share the recording with them. This time it was, hey, my engineering team needs another meeting with them. They have different questions they would have asked. And so the level of partner due diligence on this round, I think, was really kind of off the charts for us.
Which is high engagement.
Very high engagement.
Now, when the pitch happens, this is the first time they know about this company, or do you have some pre-briefing?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, they'll recognize in the interview process, these are the companies that for them should have been most relevant in the top 50 that they scored. But we provide, Airtable links that give them access to everything so they can kind of preview a little bit before. A lot of times we do have, videos of the teams. We've got live product demos, all of those things. So we do a little bit of a tee up beforehand, just a reminder.
I was wondering.
Just a reminder, this is the company that does X, Y, Z. But then a lot of the onus is really on that
entrepreneur
to really sell the value of their business and what they're doing.
Now, from the top 25 to 15?
So the top 25, that's where we do all the interviews. And I'm glad that you said 15 because in the past it was like, okay, these are our 10. We're just going to negotiate with those 10.
Yeah.
And this time around, there were so many that it was really hard to get to the top 10. So we did have 15. And we also had in 3 areas where it was such critical need for partners. we had the one we really wanted, and the one that was just like half a percentage less desired for whatever reason. And so we always knew who the replacement was if we weren't able to get across the finish line. Because as I mentioned, with more mature companies, they have boards. They need to convince them that this is an important investment for them. For the time, the $50,000 is a very nominal amount of money. It's more about the access and the business development opportunities.
I would argue that the partners pushing back on more than 10 is a true success, tangible signal. Because it means it's not that they're taking 10 because they can take 10. They actually want to go beyond that.
Exactly.
So congratulations.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you're bringing all this innovation to these partners, and you have 4 cohorts so far, and you've given some success stories. Let's talk about the entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You've talked about a lot of things which are value added. It's obvious. Is there anything you were surprised you're bringing value to the entrepreneurs that you did not think initially?
I think actually a good example of this one is Rivalry Tech. So this was a company that had applied early on. And what they allow us to be able to, from a mobile device, order food and beverage, merchandise, have it delivered all the way to your seat. They do it for the New York Mets, Chicago White Sox. So already very far in advance. They were a little bit in that, I wouldn't say early stage when they first applied, but it was more at that time period where, again, are fans going to safely be coming back in to watch sports live? But we kept nurturing that relationship. And then they were in our last cohort. And what was particularly interesting is they were then at the point where they were proving themselves in these major sporting events where you have a huge influx of people. They don't want to miss that moment. In fact, one of the founders did miss like the series home run where the ball landed right where his seats were, but he was in line getting a hot dog with his boys.
No way.
And that was his impetus of like, never again. And so for us, we've got Wells Fargo Center, we've got, PGA Tour. There's all of these places where we've got to up-level the fan experience because sometimes viewing it at home is so much better and you can just get up and go get something to eat or drink, pause the TV, all of that, that we have to bring more and more of that innovation for that elevated fan experience to get people going. And so this weekend at the Players Championship, they have a commercial deal with PGA Tour, and you will be able to order food and have that sent to certain locations at like the 17th hole. And for us, it's really powerful because at the Players now, Comcast Business is a title sponsor of that tournament. So it's become sort of like the innovation playground for Comcast Business. Rivalry Tech got their start in sports, but that use case is equally important in the healthcare space. You've got doctors, nurses that have a very short period of time. The last thing they want to be doing is standing in line. So they've had huge traction there. That's one of our most important vertical segments for Comcast Business. Likewise in hospitality. A huge deal apparently with Margaritaville. I would not have appreciated this, but apparently it's very difficult to get up from your chair when you're at the poolside and go to the bar to get a margarita. You'd rather order it from your chair and have it brought to you.
It makes sense.
Yeah, I guess so.
So we talk about cohort. So I have 2 questions in a way. Does your cohort, they get to work together to get to know each other? And then across cohort, do you plan to have some kind of an alumni group?
Yes. I love this. The serendipity of what happens within the cohort. And we think about that too. We'll bring in companies where like, boy, if we combine that technology with this technology, that is going to so amplify solving XYZ problem.
That's where the magic happens.
It's where the magic happens. And as intentional as you try to be about it, there are just these amazing, miraculous things that they discover.
You never thought about.
That you never thought about.
Yep.
And so you see this special chemistry and bond that gets created in every cohort. And I love the serendipity of that. And then we have, and we've been doing it on a quarterly basis, and we're now going to need to move to every other month. where we have alumni roundtables, and that's where we bring everyone back together. And the format is, give us an update on business. Is there any asks, any reintroduction to a sports partner or those types of things. And it's been amazing now that we're sort of blending cohorts together that somebody will say, I've had zero traction getting to my foot in the door at DraftKings. And then you can have somebody say, oh, actually, I know the chief revenue officer really well. I'll make an introduction. And so they're opening doors for each other. And so it's been fun just to kind of see cohort 1 and 2 and 3, and then soon we'll have cohort 4 mix into that. But that is it's a very important part of the program to make sure that we're continually bringing value back to the cohort.
So I feel like you're bringing value to every stakeholders.
Trying to.
And the program sounds amazing, but is there anything when you started in 2020, with what you know today, you would have done differently?
Yes. We would have been seeking more mature companies from day one.
Okay.
If you look at cohort 1, I think we were a little too anchored in, we've got to find a company to invest in where their technology works in water, because we need to bring value to USA Swimming.
Yeah.
And I think it was just a little bit, it closed the aperture too much. We needed to be thinking much more broadly. And it was when we stumbled upon, okay, it's got to be the most value for as many partners as possible. If you have singular partner risk, it's not going to bring the value that the founding team needs, and it's not going to bring value to the program at large. So I think that has helped us and moving to 6 months has been really pivotal. One area that we historically have done well in is investing in female founders. So cohorts 1, 2, and 3 either had 50% female founded, or I think one cohort had 40%. This current cohort does not. And we aren't intentionally setting quotas for ourselves. We look really closely at the top of the funnel, and we always have fewer female founders apply. And then it sort of just naturally goes down from there. But this time around, it was much harder to find that rubric fit that was a female founder. And part of my fear and concern is if you just look at sort of the investment trends and how much money does go to female founders, if you don't have that early investment to get to the place where we can work with them, it's just going to have a lower percentage. And so I think it's incumbent on us to continue to market the program and the value in places where female founders are, and continue to show them the Kelly Procs of the world and say,
exactly, you have the success stories.
Yeah, here are your success stories. And that's another area where our alumni are fantastic. We say it every time, we will know sort of who the commercial advisor is that we think. So we'll often be like, you should talk to Rivalry Tech because we think you'll be paired with PGA Tour as an example. But we say it's an open Rolodex, talk to any of them, because they have to understand for each of them going through that program, everybody had their own very unique moment, and they just need to hear it from other founders.
Are you talking about diversity, and maybe the one that don't make to the top 25, but the top 50, do you have a mentoring concept you're thinking about, or you're planning or already deploying?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Because we do nurture those relationships, we have a great example of FanFest that was in our last cohort. They got to the interview rounds the year prior, and it was just what they were doing and what they were building just wasn't the top priority. But last year, it was the perfect influx. And so they have this interactive platform that is, it's like the best of video podcasting. So if you think about it, most fans may never get to a live game. You can have 90% of your fan base will never have a ticket and physically walk in to see that game or that match. So how do you bring those fans that are around the world together virtually in pre-game shows, at halftime, post-game shows, bring our talent and influencers into that? And so they came in, we paired them with Sky Sports for proper football, or as we call it in the US, soccer. That was an opportunity for them to cover and bring in fans around a match that we didn't even have the rights to, so we wouldn't have had a voice. But they were able to bring their commentators in, bring fans from all around the world to trash talk about why this team was going to do better than this team, and keep that fandom that in place. And then with Premier League coming in, they were shadowing us through the program just to make sure that it was structured in a way that they could add value before officially joining the partner consortium. And when Alex Willis saw that, knowing they had the summer series coming to the US, she was like, this is exactly what we need, is to be able to bring that global fandom together. So we were able to do a pilot before the match in Atlanta, right there in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, before the match began, and brought in fans from all these different pubs and bars in New York that were like, Chelsea's going to win, and here's why. And it just creates this amazing experience. They did zero marketing of it whatsoever. And they had 275,000 people that tuned in because they can simulcast that across all of their channels. And that's really interesting data for them, because throughout those shows, they can put on a QR code that encourages you to go buy merchandise or sign up for a Peacock subscription because you don't want to miss the next time Chelsea plays, as an example. And so they've been a rock star success. And, but they weren't the right fit at that time, the year prior. So
it has to intersect.
It has to intersect. And so we're constantly, nurturing those relationships, watching, their progress and their traction for, when that timing is right.
So we're at GCV Monterey. Everyone talks about financial value, strategic value. But here I think that the strategic value is so strong. It moves the needle for your partners, for Comcast. You will get the financial value because the help you provide to the startups just means you're going to do well. Is there any tips you would tell the audience about how to think about strategic value when you have this kind of engagements with startups? Because I feel like you probably have a few golden nuggets about strategic value will bring financial value, both to the mothership as well as your own equity investments.
Yeah. Well, it might be helpful just to give a lay of the land of Comcast, because we have Comcast Ventures, which has evolved as more of a strategic investment and really laddering up to the cable side of our business and finding those adjacent growth areas. And that can be in things like health tech, but they're thinking about, we would be thinking about athlete player performance, like injury prevention, health recovery, load management, those types of things. In the sports setting, they're looking at like at-home diagnostics, where you are 100% reliant on a high-speed, dedicated, does not fail internet connection. So they bring in, they're really looking at those next adjacent growth areas. We're really deep and anchored in on sports because it's so core to our business. It's live, it drives advertising revenue. It's where we invest so much from a right perspective. And then we have another program called Lift Labs, and they're actually a 4-week model. They are stage agnostic. They do not make an investment, but it's really anchored around a really timely trend. So obviously AI. So they've had, they just finished an enterprise AI one. And that's, again, it's another vehicle and channel to get our employees used to working with technology in a safe way that is going to be impactful to the business in ways we can't even yet imagine. And so when you look at that as like a portfolio of programs where we are finding, sort of aiming and bringing those outside voices in, I think it does kind of help us hit a lot of those different sectors. on both the strategic and the financial return side.
Yeah, and this very strong focus on sports allows you to really get the perfect startups that can bring value.
Yes.
It's not as wide.
Yes.
And then Comcast Ventures. So how much do you work with Comcast Ventures?
So I actually report into Alice Goldberg, who is our director of, or managing director of Comcast Ventures. So hand in hand.
Yeah.
And it is very much, it's sort of, I like to think of it as sort of a, it's almost like a product portfolio. It's an innovation portfolio. We've got to have different sort of programs and investment vehicles to find the right companies that we need to be working with.
So why would a company similar to Comcast in a different geography not have a program like yours?
I know. I think everyone should, just not necessarily in. No, I'm kidding. No, in all seriousness, you look at like an NBA Launchpad.
Yep.
That is such a similar ethos and investment strategy that we have. Theirs is very deep on making sure that their sport is the worldwide, innovator for their fans. We're doing that across multiple sports, but it's amazing to see with no intentionality, in Venue, in our cohort, one was in their last cohort. We both share Plantiga as investments in our current portfolios right now. Stellar Algo came through their NBA equity. They're in our current cohort. So I think sports is maybe set up in a way that you're so reliant on all these different stakeholders for all the revenue levers involved to how do you create an experience, in a stadium or a living room. It is truly built on teamwork, at the core of sports. And so I think it naturally lends itself to sport, but I think if you pick any sector, energy, health tech, some of these other ones, I think this is a model that can really scale.
Very nice. And it's a good segue to my last question, which is, what are you excited about next? Where would you want to invest and introduce to the partners?
Yes, I think I'm always looking for the technology that can bring something unique in the living room that makes you also have a little bit of FOMO of, wait a minute, I'm missing something in the stadium. And so I think we've got to continually have that balance between the two of, are there different camera angles? Are there different things that you will see that kind of make you feel like you're in the stadium or you're bringing the best of the stadium into the living room? I think those are really interesting ones. I love anything that brings data into the storytelling. And that can, for me, around like predictive analytics, that's powerful, certainly from a betting standpoint, but it's also powerful in the living room of, oh my gosh, something amazing is about to happen. Shouldn't you pick up your voice remote and say big moments and have it take you right to that moment because you want to see it live, all of those things. Anything and everything that can make it very, very personalized. The reason that you might love football is going to be different from somebody else. The way you consume that sport, the way you show up as a fan is different. And we need to be able to use technology in a way that can scale and address all of those different fan segments.
I feel like you have crafted the dream job.
I had the best job in the company. Yes, thank you. I get to be right there at that intersection of technology and sports and just work with these incredibly brilliant entrepreneurs. So yes, dream job.
Jenna, it was wonderful to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.
Thank you.